This is Joel Tvarga, Product Manager at memoQ. Due to summer holidays, you get this Hello memoQ presentation as a pre-recorded video instead of a webinar. So let me show you what memoQ 9.12 has to offer to you. First off, we'll be talking about your ideas from the idea portal because your opinion does matter. Then we move on to machine translation to talk about some exciting new plugins and major updates to our existing NT plugins in memoQ. So first off, ideas. From an idea to feature, it's really important for us to understand the problem rather than accepting a feature request at face value. So what we do is we do a lot of discussing the idea with users on the idea portal. We even do prototyping and user interviews and even more discussion. And after several iterations, we implement a feature that solves the initial problem. Maybe not exactly the way you wanted it, but it's an answer to your issue. So let's start off with one of the most popular ideas on the idea portal. As you can see, the problem was that the user said that auto-propagation of repetitions is great, but sometimes a segment has to be translated differently in one specific place of the text, even though all other instances of the segment are identical. We entered into a lot of discussion and we wanted to understand what exactly our users needed, and we came up with a solution to the problem. And here's what happens in memoQ 9.12. As you can see, we have a file with 4 rows, 2 names in rows 1 and 3, and 2 identical rows, row 2 and 4. As soon as I type in the English translation of row 2, it is auto-propagated into row 4. The problem is it needs to be changed. But once I change it from the male to the female voice, it changes row number 2. And this is because we have this fantastic feature, auto-propagation, which otherwise is a great tool, and I'd like to keep it on, propagate backward and forward as well. But in this particular case, it's an issue, because as you can see, it changes even if I don't want to. So what we did, by double-clicking this arrow, you can make an exception from auto-propagation. If you have multiple repetitions, this single line will be made an exception. As you can see, as soon as I confirm it, it doesn't change row number 2. If I undo or disable the exception, then the same thing will happen again. And then I can go back and re-invoke the feature to disable auto-propagation, either by double-clicking or using the context menu. So this comes really handy in a number of cases. So what happens is auto-propagation is stored in the XF file, and it also means that all project participants will see this info. So as you can see here, we have the reviewer, one user, and the reviewer one user can see the very same thing and can also change auto-propagation if the reviewer disagrees with the translator's choice. Even better news is that the very same information is displayed in WebTrans. You have the very same auto-propagation, and double-clicking this icon will enable or disable auto-propagation for the repetitions. I hope this new feature answers a lot of your prayers, and you will enjoy using it in cases when you do not want to turn off your auto-propagation, but you do need to make an exception. Another feature of yours is the option to ignore non-translatables in spell check and QA. We actually received a lot of input from our users how they use spell check, and they use spell check in various ways. Some of them use it directly in the spell check dialog, some of them use it as part of QA. So even though the original idea said that non-translatables should be recognized as accepted terms we actually came to the conclusion that what we really needed was something like adding things to the ignore lists, but we really didn't want to mix non-translatables with ignore list items, because non-translatables have a specific function, and that is to record product names and some expressions that you don't want to translate, and you want to keep it that way in the target language as well. And this is actually illustrated under the translation results when these non-translatable items are listed there. And even QA picks them up and warns you if for some reason these non-translatable items do not show up on the target side, meaning that you actually translated or at least omitted them. So here's what we did. After discussing with you, we agreed that we would introduce a new option for spell check and keep non-translatables and ignore lists separately, but still use them together in the following two instances. In the spell checking dialog, we introduced a new checkbox, which if you click it, then during the spell check, ignore list items in the non-translatable, will ignore items in the non-translatable lists that are added to the project. And so you don't need to do anything. You don't need to add them to the ignore list one by one. You just click this single checkbox, and the information in the non-translatable list will be ignored by spell check. The same thing happens for QA. On the Edit QA Settings dialog, under Spaces, Capitals, and Characters tab, you have spelling and grammar warnings. And if you have this first checkbox enabled, Generate Warnings for Spelling Errors, then you have the option to check Ignore Items in the Non-Translatable Lists added to the project. And it will do the same thing, except that Resolve Errors and Warnings screen, you will no longer receive spell check related warnings about the non-translatable items. So this will save you time and hassle, definitely. Let's see what else we have in store. Concordance is also one of the central features of memoQ, but the old design had some flaws. As the user describes, the problem was that actually forget which side you're actually running the concordance on, because we used to have a checkbox, search in target. And if you wanted to check, for instance, whether your translation was in line with some other terms or whether it contradicted some other terms, and you click this checkbox, then you tended to forget about it, and you would be surprised that you would not get any concordance hits further down the road. It does happen, or quite frequently, and it did happen to me several times that it took me minutes before I recognized that, oh gosh, I had this search in target on, and that's why I was not getting any concordance hits. So it was clear that this UI item had to go. We also identified two more issues. Text was not really self-explanatory what it was doing, and numeric equivalence was kind of a geeky expression. So we fixed that as well. So here's the design fix. Instead of the checkbox, we introduced two radio buttons, which clearly indicates on which side of the translation the concordance is going to be performed. Also, we fixed this label to be more self-explanatory, as well as this one. Find different numbers too. So even if you have an expression that includes a number, if you have this checkbox checked, the very same expression but with different numbers will be picked up by concordance. So let's see how it works. The old behavior was that when you had a search in target selected and you search something in the target, it was easy because it did pick up the occurrences of the word fortress if you wanted to check your translations against the translation memory. But if you forgot about this checkbox and you actually highlighted the word on the source side, then you didn't get any results. With the new edition of memoQ, Concordance works this way. As soon as you highlight or select the word fortress and press Ctrl K, the radio button searching target is selected and concordance is performed on the target side. As soon as you select a different word but on the source side, you can see that automatically searching source is selected, which is pretty handy. But if you still want to make the search on the target side, you still have the option to manually change the radio buttons. This automatic feature, however, will probably help you out in 99% of the cases. We also have another great feature coming up, numbering of short inline tags. The number of users who voted for this feature actually indicated that we had a serious issue in the desktop client version with the short display of tags. Our users had the option to either use short display and then not see what the tags were about, or to be more accurate, they could select the long display version and know all the information about the tags. But then, as you can see in this particular case, it was really hard to see the sentence or the text as a whole and be able to translate or review your text efficiently. So we had a lot of discussion with our users to understand their problem, what they really needed. They were talking about locking segments, but not with the regular lock command, but with something else. We actually dig deep down into the issue, and we figured that all they needed was just keep the short tag display option, but somehow make the user aware which tags belong together and which ones needed to be inserted in some different places. So let's see what we did. Here we have a translation, and I'm a reviewer. I switch to the short inline text display. As you can see, I can immediately see where a specific phrase is translated, and I can check whether the targets are the same. So Central Europe is Közép-Európa in Hungarian, and as you can see, the very same tags are displayed, 143, 341 on both sides, so I can just tick off the warning about the change order of the tags. And I do the same thing for the second. I can identify that Hungarian is Magyar. Even though they are different places in the sentence, I can make sure that these tags are in the correct order. The same tags are displayed for the specific phrase that they belong to. So as you can see, it's a solution that matches these tags, really identifies the opening and closing tags with numbers, the very same type and name and ID of the tag is displayed with the same number within the sentence. If you have an empty tag or if you have a new inserted tag, then that will receive a new number that's not visible on the source side, but otherwise all the tags on the target side are identified based on the source side. So that's what the logic is trying to do. So much for short inline tags. Now some good news for Qterm users. One of the top feature requests or one of the popular ideas about Qterm on the IDS portal was that our users wanted to have NiuTrans defaults in Qterm. Because the problem was that every time they added a new term to a term base, regardless of the language, the actual term base, they always face the same issue. Qterm used a default value for case sensitivity and matching that very often had to be changed. And this generated a lot of extra work for our Qterm users. So this was the core issue, and we decided to go with a proven best practice that we are using in memoQ term bases. We double-checked it with our users, and they said that's exactly that they needed. So here's what we did. In the existing term base, we introduced under properties a new option, new term defaults. If you click on it, then you will see this setup. You can define matching, select from the available options, as well as case sensitivity. So I opened this dialog and I changed from the default values to this. So English, we have no case sensitivity and fuzzy matching. For Hungarian, we have case sensitivity and custom matching. And as soon as I click apply and I create a new term, then this is what I will see. That's exactly what I set up on the previous dialog. So from this time on, in this existing term base, all future terms that I will enter will use no case sensitivity and fuzzy matching for American English terms, and case sensitivity and custom matching for Hungarian terms. But this is not just for existing term bases. For new term bases, as you create them, on the third screen, on the terms, you will see the very same new term defaults. So if you click this command, you will see the very same dialog where you can identify and define the preferred case sensitivity and matching options of the specific languages. So there you go. Hope you'll enjoy it, all Qterm users. And now let's move on to a new area, machine translation. We have some exciting news for you. We are introducing 2 new MT plugins in memoQ 9.12. Globalese has been around for a while, and they even had a memoQ MT plugin, but it was a private MT plugin, and it required quite a bit of workarounds. They had specific instructions on their website, how you had to set up the client, and how you actually had to adjust the batch size that determines how much text is sent from memoQ to the MT plugin. So it was not really the ideal choice. But recently, Globalese has reworked their MT plugin. They submitted it for approval, and now it's in memoQ 9.12. So here's how it works. You get an online administration interface. After you log in, you have basically this is what you will use most frequently. You will create engines, and you will specify engines and even upload content to them. So you will have a number of engine options. You can use engines as stock, or for some extra subscription fee, you can use the stock plus or domain adapted versions of the engines. Stock plus means you have more training material added to the regular stock engine, so it will be geared towards your specific corpora. Domain adapted is it simply means that based on the domain, Globalese will return different results, and the model will be trained to serve specific fields of expertise as you use it. You also have the option of creating groups for these models, so you can add models into different groups. You can identify multiple groups and assign various models there, as well as define different user permissions for the specific groups. That will allow you a lot of flexibility when it comes to using Globalese MT services in memoQ. So here's how the MT plugin looks like in memoQ. You have the regular credentials section where you can log in and check your login information. And then you have these filters, the very same group and engine filters that you saw on the previous screen. So first you can choose which group you would like to use, which group of the account that you have with Globalese. And from within the group, you can choose which one you prefer to choose in this specific machine translation settings resource. As you can see, I have two options. One is actually disabled because that's a stock option, and this one, the second one, I can choose because that's a custom engine that I can use for my translation. The next one is NiuTrans, the next MT plugin in memoQ 9.12. It's a new edition again, and although most Europeans don't really use NiuTrans, NiuTrans is actually is the largest MT engine in the world. Currently, it supports 304 languages. It has Chinese as the core language, and it has the very same kind of administration interface, online administration interface as many other MT providers have. So on the online interface, you have various options. You can purchase credits and work with models and use different resources. So basically, this is where you do all your setup before you use NiuTrans in memoQ. And therefore, in memoQ, the MT plugin looks very simple. You just have a username, password, you log in, or if you don't have a login yet, you register. Basically, it takes you to a website where you can create your own account. As soon as you logged in, you can just click OK, and NiuTrans is ready to use. In addition to these two new MT plugins in memoQ 9.12, we also have some updates to existing MT plugins. Google Cloud Translation Advanced was introduced in memoQ 9.7 in this format, as you can see on the screen. One notable feature in 9.7 was the ability to add glossaries to your settings. But these glossaries actually had to be defined in advance. And this proved to be a little challenging, or not even a little challenging, quite challenging for many users, because it's easy to upload glossary files to Google Cloud, but then you had to perform some really tricky steps to activate these glossaries and make these glossary resources available for Google Cloud Advanced to be used in machine translation. So whoever was not a programmer or didn't have any coder on the team really ran into trouble, and we had to help them out on numerous occasions. And so this is why we decided to do the following. We introduced a new line here. If you can't find your glossary in the drop-down list, click here. And if you click here, you'll see this Create Glossary Resource dialog, which will help you bridge the gap that existed beforehand in between creating and uploading a glossary file and activating it and making it available to Google to use it in machine translation. So as you can see, you need to enter a bunch of data. It sounds kind of intimidating, but don't worry, because all you have to do is just go to Google Cloud Console and you click on the specific glossary file and you look at all this metadata, and you select the appropriate content, like the URI or even the name and stuff like that. You copy and paste them. So once you have it all correctly copied and pasted and selected all the options and the languages available, once you click Create, after a little hesitation, you will reach the home plugin screen, and you will see the brand new glossary resource appear in your drop-down list. So now it's available for you to use in your projects. We really hope that this new addition, this new tool that we added to the MT plugin will help a lot of our customers to make the most out of their Google Advanced experience. So we look forward to your positive feedback. In addition to Google Cloud Translation Advanced, we also updated the Systran MT plugin in memoQ. This is the old version of the plugin. We actually supported different API versions ever since Systran has discontinued the old one. So now we didn't need the API version selector. but we did need something more. The profile selection was kind of clumsy for some of our users. First off, you were only able to select a single profile, basically the equivalent of an empty model in other cases. So you were able to select only a single profile from a dropdown, and the dropdown was pretty long, and it was very easy to miss the correct profile you wanted to select. In addition, not all the information was available about those profiles, as you will see later. These profiles are actually listed on or listed by Systran on their marketplace catalog website. There's like an exhaustive list, a list of profiles published by Systran, where you can see the domain, source and target languages, and you can even test it actually online. So these are the profiles that you want to select inside memoQ using the Systran NT plugin. So users needed the very same kind of flexibility and extra information to make selections. So what we did was we basically performed a complete plugin overhaul. And so this is how the new UI looks like. You have a simplified login section of the plugin, and we have a new section, Assign Profiles. As you can see, within a single empty plugin settings, you can set up multiple profiles. Basically, you just need a single empty plugin settings resource in memoQ to use Systran with, and you can define several profiles for different source and target language combinations. How do you do that? Well, you click Assign Profile. Once you click the Assign Profile, you have this new dialog where you can identify the source and the target language, and well, you need to tell the plugin how to store these profiles, what source language and target languages to store with. Then you select the profile name, and as soon as you click Assign, you will see that this new profile will appear in the list of assigned profiles, and it's now ready to use whenever your Systran NT plugin is attached to a Dutch to English language project. So this concludes the presentation on memoQ 9.12. So I want to thank you for your attention and wish you a pleasant rest of the summer holidays, and we hope to see you soon when we present to you memoQ 9.13. Until then, goodbye.